I was raised on like I can see it. So we've been through a lot
Morning, on behalf of myself, my Steel Caucus co-chair, Congressman Randall, welcome our distinguished witness, consumers, and guests to the State of Steel Reform. As chairman of the Congressional Steel Caucus, I'm proud to represent the largest steelmaking district in the nation, which continues to grow. In just the past few years, U.S. Steel invested $3 billion in the construction of Big River Steel 2 in Mississippi County, Arkansas, and recently announced plans to invest another $3 billion in new direct reduced iron and grain-oriented electric steel facilities. High-bar steel, following its first run of rebar in June, is already gearing up to invest $1 billion to build a high-bar steel facility and double its current output. In addition, Nucor Steel and Arkansas Steel Associates, multi-decade partners, continue to be anchors of the Northeast Arkansas steel community, having generated a multi-billion-dollar economic impact for the region since the late 1980s. I'm proud of the story. My district is not alone with the story. There are investments across the country being made that are growing the American steel industry. But it's important that we remember this was not inevitable. Prior to 2018, America was in the process of giving away its steelmaking capabilities to foreign nations. Thankfully, President Trump recognized this catastrophic impact on communities and threat to our national security of the shrinking steel industry and took bold action to implement Section 232 tariffs, sparking a resurgence of domestic steel manufacturing. The Steel Caucus now serves as the primary voice in Congress to safeguard and proclaim the benefits of Section 232 tariffs. This caucus of over 100 members strong, we are a pretty loud voice. We're not afraid to use that loud voice as evidenced by the multiple wins the caucus has achieved after weighing in on issues. This includes the continuation of 232 tariffs throughout the Biden administration, victories in anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases, the Department of Commerce's rejection of change from Vietnam's non-market economy status, and action from both the Biden and Trump administrations following the surge in Mexican steel imports. But we can't rest. The fight continues. Countries like China are working hard to evade our trade laws, even going so far as to use multiple countries as conduits to manufacture or move CCP-subsidized steel and then dump it onto our markets, creating an endless whack-a-mole trade enforcement problem. That's why we need to step up as Congress and pass comprehensive trade legislation such as leveling the playing field for 2.0, which addresses many of these loopholes. Additionally, as the USMCA comes up for review in 2026, we need to carefully consider the implications of new provisions and what can be done to protect American industry. I have full confidence in the Trump administration as it negotiates with Canada and Mexico to maintain a strong America First position. However, we also need, we know trade cheaters will always look for ways to continue cheating. So we must remain hyper-vigilant to protect our domestic steel industry and national security. This means it's vital to maintain the Steel Caucus as a strong, bipartisan institution that serves as the steady hand guiding policy and fighting for the steel industry and its workers long after Vice Chairman Murdan and myself move on from Congress. Thanks to President Trump's efforts, the Steel Caucus' hard work in Congress, and most importantly, the companies and organizations sitting in front of us today, it's an exciting time to be in the steel industry. Again, I want to thank the witnesses for being here today, and I look forward to your testimony. And now recognize the gentleman from the great state of Indiana and the Vice Chairman of the Steel Caucus for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and thank you to the panel and all the participants for being here today. I'd first like to thank my colleague, Chairman Crawford, for his leadership on the caucus, for this collaboration, and all the efforts and initiatives in the 119th Congress. Through challenging political times, this caucus has remained committed to a bipartisan roots, to working across the aisle and advocating for the American steel industry and its workforce. I am grateful for the Chairman's friendship and dedication. I look forward to continuing our work together well in the future. So my grandfather came over from Czechoslovakia, worked at Finland Steel. He ended up in East Chicago and Harbor and worked there for 53 years in a blast furnace. My entire region depends on the steel industry. It's the economic engine that drives people's livelihood, people's health care, people's pension. From the Steelworkers Union, which my grandfather was part of, who's a partner in our communities, to the trade men and women who rely upon the investments that you make, and to the people you employ. I want to thank all of you who are here on this panel for the number of lives that you represent that create work and wealth in my community. And with those investments, what it means to Northwest Indiana. I greatly appreciate your time and efforts and what you do for working men and women in my community. I also want to thank the witnesses who have traveled from share their perspectives on evolving challenges, opportunities, and goals of the domestic steel industry. Steel remains a critical component of our economy and is essential to the automotive manufacturing, construction, energy, transportation, and our national security. This industry is also the lifeblood of communities across the country, including Indiana, where the steel industry directly employs about 28,000 workers and is responsible for more than a quarter of the nation's total steel production. All of the industry stakeholders testifying today maintain a large presence in my state, with facilities in East Chicago, Gary, Hobart, Burns Harbor, Crawfordsville, Fort Wayne, and beyond. And I thank you for helping to create work and wealth for families in the state of Indiana and across our nation. As our witnesses will soon discuss, the American steel industry faces threats of several fronts. Global steel overcapacity continues to grow as countries such as China flood our domestic markets with heavily subsidized and often unethically produced steel products. Over the last several years, members of this caucus have worked hand in hand with the administration to provide protections to American steel producers against unfair trade policies. In particular, Section 232 tariffs, steel tariffs that have been a powerful tool in deterring bad trade practices and revitalizing American steel production. In part because of the persistence of this bipartisan caucus, there has been a significant progress over the last couple of years to strengthen these measures. This caucus will continue to work very closely with the Trump administration to hone its strategy on Section 232 tariffs and to ensure that the policies enacted serve to benefit American steelmakers, workers, and manufacturers. We are also working hard to ensure that the executive branch has the necessary resources to ensure these trade policies are enforced. Just last week, the House approved funding for the International Trade Commission and International Trade Administration, which has the responsibility for carrying out trade remedy laws. This funding is expected to be signed into law next week and will help ensure that American industry and workers can compete on a level playing field. Many of my colleagues present today are also championing legislation that strengthens our domestic steel industry through enhancing trade enforcement, rebuilding our domestic shipbuilding capacity, and improving Buy American requirements. As the USMCA is renegotiated this year, the Steel Caucus will also be engaged in closing the loophole that exists in the current agreement that allow for transshipment of Chinese steel products that directly harm American businesses. As we listen to testimony from our witnesses today, I look forward to hearing more about the challenges facing American steelmakers and what this caucus and Congress can do in order to help meet those challenges. At the heart of this industry is a dedicated workforce and communities that rely on these jobs. As I mentioned, as the grandson of a steelworker who spent 53 years in a steel mill in East Chicago, I know the importance of advocating for good-paying jobs for working families, and I will continue to be a strong advocate for these workers and will do everything in my power to secure the continued health and strength of the domestic steel industry. Again, I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for appearing at this caucus today and look forward to hearing from you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for his partnership and leadership on helping us advocate for the steel industry. I really appreciate that. We're moving now to our witness panel. I want to remind witnesses to keep your remarks to 5 minutes in the interest of getting through this in a timely fashion. I want to introduce our first witness. Mr. David Byrd is the president and CEO of U.S. Steel. He's worked in that capacity since 2017 and also served on the board of directors. Prior to his current position, Mr. Byrd was U.S. Steel's executive vice president and CFO after coming over from Caterpillar, where he also served as their CFO. In his tenure at U.S. Steel, Mr. Byrd has led the company in historic partnerships and investments. This includes acquiring Big River Steel, the construction of Big River Steel 2, and the commitment to invest $3 billion in the construction of a new reduced direct iron electrical steel facility, all in my district. In addition, U.S. Steel has committed $3.1 billion in investments to its Gary Works plant by 2028, and has announced a new $1 billion hot strip mill at its Mon Valley Works Edgar Thompson plant. U.S. Steel is a historic American company that literally built this country, and next month it turns 125. So happy birthday to U.S. Steel, and Mr. Byrd, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your testimony.
Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Orban, and members of the Steel Caucus, thank you for welcoming me today. It's an honor to be here representing an American icon, U.S. Steel. talk about projects or policy, I want to begin with something a bit deeper. I think you all know this. Strong nations make things, and when a nation stops making things, it starts depending upon others to decide its future. Steel is where independence begins. At U.S. Steel, we make steel that is mined, melted, and made in the USA. Everyone in this room understands the stakes. If you care about national security, economic security, and energy security, you must care about American steel. And a strong steel industry depends on strong leadership right here. The Steel Caucus has been steady through every cycle, every headwind, every test. Your leadership has kept American steel competitive, secure, and central to our country's future. And because of that leadership, I'm pleased to tell you today, American steel is strengthening. Demand is solid, reindustrialization is real, and across our footprint, you can feel something powerful taking hold, a belief that America's manufacturing golden age isn't behind us, it's being rebuilt. Next month, U.S. Steel will celebrate its 125th anniversary. A company that helped build the modern United States is now helping build its future. Simply put, U.S. Steel is back, and you can see it across the country. In Pennsylvania, Mon Valley, we're advancing major upgrades, including a new hot strip mill, investments that secure thousands of family-sustaining jobs in communities that have powered American industry for generations. In Arkansas, Chairman Crawford, our Big River campus is thriving. Big River 2 is online and ramping up, and as you know, we're preparing to go even further with world-class DRI and the highest grade steels in the world. Thank you for your leadership. In Northwest Indiana, Vice Chairman Urban, Gary Work is rising again with a major blast furnace reline and upgrades that strengthen one of the backgrounds of American manufacturing. In Illinois, at Granite City, we are restarting a blast furnace. Granite City has grit, it has heart. In Alabama, we're making critical investments to support our nuclear business to bolster America's energy infrastructure. Minnesota's iron ore makes all of this possible, supporting steelmaking in both blast furnaces and EAFs. These investments all share one purpose: keeping American steel strong, competitive, and made at home. Recently, I spoke with a steel worker whose family has worked our mills for 3 generations. He told me, for the first time in a long time, my kids believe they can build their future right here. That belief, dignity, skill, opportunity, that's what these investments protect. As we build, we're also working proactively with environmental agencies in every level. We welcome strong standards and we share the commitment to the responsible steelmaking, but we also know this: when approvals move efficiently, America moves efficiently. Jobs don't wait, communities don't wait, and national security does not wait. Fair trade enforcement remains absolutely essential. When American steel workers compete on a level playing field, they win. When foreign producers dump subsidized steel into our markets, American workers pay the price. Tariffs work. They must remain strong, and tariffs on steel-intensive goods expanded just last year are game changers. They protect jobs, preserve domestic capacity, and support the investments we're making for customers across automotive, energy, construction, and manufacturing. Members of the caucus, steel matters. It matters to national security, it matters to our industrial base, it matters to working families, it matters to America's future. We're investing, we're hiring, we're building. U.S. Steel is back, and with your leadership, American steel will stay strong for generations. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Appreciate your testimony. We're going to introduce our next witness, Mr. Ben Pickett, Executive Vice President of Member Services, Nucor. Mr. Pickett is the Executive Vice President of Nucor in 2018 as Director of Corporate Legal Affairs. In 2020, was promoted to General Manager and Counsel of Public Affairs and Government Relations and elected to Vice President in 2023. Prior to joining Nucor, he was partnered with Moore and Van Allen, PLLC. He holds Bachelor of Arts and Doctorate degrees from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Nucor is the largest steel manufacturer and recycler on the North American continent. It's played a pioneering role in electric arc furnace steel production. Nucor operates facilities across the U.S., including Nucor Yamato and Nucor Steel Arkansas plants in my district. Mr. Pickett, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Ravan, and members of the Steel Caucus. I'm Ben Pickett, and I have the privilege of serving as Executive Vice President of Business Services for Nucor Corporation. On behalf of Nucor and its 33,000 teammates, thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the state of the American steel industry. With over 300 locations across 40 states, Nucor is the largest steel producer and recycler in North America. From national defense to oil and gas pipelines, the electricity grid, and critical inputs for our industrial base, American steel companies like Nucor are helping to build a dynamic and secure domestic economy and creating high-wage jobs for American workers. Common sense trade policies like the Section 232 steel tariffs and strong enforcement of our trade laws have kept unfairly traded excess steel production at bay. This has created market stability and space for companies like Nucor to invest and grow our capabilities. Since 2017, Nucor has invested more than $20 billion in the American economy. We recently commissioned 2 new bar mill projects in Lexington, North Carolina and Kingman, Arizona, and our new $4 billion sheet mill in West Virginia is on track to begin ramping up by the end of 2026. Along with the most advanced plate mill in the world in Brandenburg, Kentucky, and 3 new transmission tower production facilities in Alabama, Indiana, and Utah, just to name a few. These and other Nucor investments are creating thousands of family-supporting jobs across the United States. Safety is our #1 value, and we've accomplished all of these investments in America while achieving the safest years in the history of our company, lowering our injury and illness rate every year since 2017. With the right policies in place, we expect economic progress to continue, but this is no time for complacency. Our foreign competitors are intent on capturing U.S. market share at our expense. Global overcapacity, especially in China and its proxies, is once again increasing and remains an existential threat. The OECD projects that global steelmaking capacity will increase by 165 million metric tons by 2027. Resulting in 721 million metric tons of overcapacity. If we let our guard down, these volumes will flood our market, undermine our investments, and harm our teammates and communities throughout America. Make no mistake, the American steel industry is already the most advanced in the world, and we have more than enough capacity to supply domestic demand without imports or foreign influence or foreign investment. As we look ahead, the caucus's continued leadership will be essential to reinforcing the policies that work and advancing improvements where they are needed. First, the Section 232 national security tariffs should remain in place. These measures have enjoyed broad bipartisan support, and they are a vital defense as long as they remain robust and comprehensive. The President's decision last year to revoke exclusions and alternative arrangements, increase tariffs to 50%, and expand coverage to additional derivative articles was the right move. The caucus should vocally oppose any efforts to weaken these measures, whether through carve-outs for countries like Canada and Mexico, or through gamesmanship like underreporting the value of steel and steel products. Notwithstanding the Section 232 measures, U.S. trade laws remain our primary defense against dumped and subsidized imports. For decades, the trade remedy laws have allowed us to fight back against unfair trade. We continue to rely on these critical tools, most recently with cases against unfairly traded imports of corrosion-resistant steel and rebar. But these laws are long overdue for an update. The Level the Playing Field Act 2.0 would make important improvements to AD/CVD laws. We urge the caucus to support timely passage of this legislation and to guard against any changes to law or agency practice that might weaken AD/CVD enforcement. Finally, the United States will have a critical opportunity to strengthen the USMCA through the upcoming joint review process. We encourage USTR to pursue further improvements, including implementation of a melted and poured in North America requirement for all steel and steel-intensive products. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. We appreciate the Steel Caucus's leadership and partnership as we work together to strengthen American steel and the communities it supports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickett. Mr. Ravan.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Lorenzo Gonzalez. He's been Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Cleveland-Cliffs since August of 2014, and also serves as Chairman of the American Iron and Steel Institute. At led the company through major strategic initiatives, transforming Cleveland Cliffs into the largest flat-rolled steel company in North America. I will also note that Cleveland Cliffs operates steel mills in northwest Indiana and employs thousands of steel workers in my district. Mr. Gonzalez has testified numerous times before the Steel Caucus, and it is my pleasure to welcome him today.
Thank you very much, Congressman McMahon. Good morning, Steel Caucus members. President Trump spent the first year of his second term laying the groundwork to rebuild manufacturing in the United States and undo the disastrous and decades-long experiment of globalization. Globalization has damaged the profitability of the domestic steel industry by forcing capable steel plants to shut down or to operate below capacity. While the American steel industry still operates below acceptable levels of capacity utilization, the trade actions implemented by President Trump's administration are moving us in the right direction. Due to Section 232 steel tariffs, imports are down significantly, accounting for 16% of the market in October 2025. This 16% number represents a significant improvement over the 25 to 30% import penetration levels of the recent past. Last year, President Trump took decisive steps to restore the effectiveness of the Section 232 steel tariffs by eliminating tariff exclusions and tariff-free arrangements that had completely impaired the original Section 232 program. In June 2025, the President increased the Section 232 steel tariffs from 25% to 50%. This doubling of the tariffs was absolutely necessary to reduce imports from countries that operate as steel dumping machines. In order to export steel to the United States at dumping price, these countries take advantage of a number of things at their disposal, like weak labor laws, non-existent environmental standards, currency manipulation, and government subsidies, among other trades. The group of bad players includes China, Brazil, Japan, Canada, Mexico, Vietnam, and several others. It's now up to steel consumers and end users to ensure that a resurgency of U.S. manufacturing takes hold. Currently, we still see far too much complacence by the steel consuming sectors who are slow to modify their supply chains and continue to seek exemptions in order to use steel that is not melted and poured in the United States. It's time to recognize the current volatility in global geopolitical dynamics. That's the new normal, even here, close to home, in the Western Hemisphere. This volatility impacts the reliability of shipping routes and disrupts supply chains, meaning artificially cheap steel and all goods produced overseas are now at risk. Bringing their production to the United States resolves the problem. Consider that the USMCA is subject to review this year. The most damaging consequence of NAFTA and USMCA as successor is that these trade agreements facilitated companies to relocate plants and move jobs to Mexico and Canada, destroying the entire American manufacturing communities in the process. The Section 232 steel tariffs must be maintained and not weakened with any exclusions or country exceptions. That applies to Canada and Mexico. While Mexico is more visible and easier to identify as a problem, Canada is also very problematic. The Canadian government believes that Canada has a birthright to sell everything they produce into the United States. We know that very well because we own Stelco, the largest steel company in Canada. For the record, since we acquired Stelco in 2024, before President Trump was back in office, We blocked Stelco from selling steel into the U.S. market. I am glad that there's a good chance that the USMCA will not survive the 2026 review. We need manufacturing in the United States, not in Canada, not in Mexico. One final point I would like to emphasize, 2025 proved that Section 232 steel tariffs are not inflationary. After almost 1 year of steel tariffs in place, no sector can honestly claim that the sales prices of their products to consumers increased because of the price they pay for steel. Thank you very much for your leadership. I appreciate the opportunity of the more than happy to answer questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Murray.
This time, again, thank you, Lorenzo. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Director Michael Millsap, who began his career with United Steelworkers in Gary, Indiana. Throughout his career with the USW, Director Millsap has made an enduring impact in fighting for fairness, safety, and better treatment for steelworkers and families in Northwest Indiana and across the country. He has served as the District Director for Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin since 2014 and has spent more than 50 years in this industry. I'm grateful for Director Millsap and United Steelworkers to have a seat at this table. He is an individual that fights for the leaders in the steel industry and for the families that do the work. And it is my pleasure and honor to have Director Millsap with us today. Director.
Thank you. Good morning, Steel Caucus Chairman Crawford and Vice Chairman Revere, and the members of the caucus. My name is Michael Millsap. I'm a second generation steelworker. And my career started at Republic Steel in 1973. I've been a member of the USW going on 53 years now. I advanced in the union to be the USW District 7 Director, which covers the states of Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. In my current role, I chair several bargaining committees for the union. But important to this caucus is that I'm the chairman of the Basic Steel Industry Committee. I am the chairman of the U.S. Steel Bargaining Committee and secretary of the Union's Bargaining Committee for Cleveland Cliffs. These two companies will go into bargaining this year, 2026, kicking off a process that has occurred for 88 years now, where we will negotiate agreements that will employ tens of thousands and pump billions of dollars into the local economies across the country. One of our real concerns in the strong bargaining is going to be investment into our facilities to provide job security for our members and their families. As a leader in the steel industry, I can tell you that workers across the country are recognizing the benefits of joining the USW. This year, or last year, we have seen over 1,000 new industry workers join our union. The workers at the Independent Steelworkers Alliance at Liberty Steel voted to merge with the USW just a few months ago. And several hundred workers at JSW Steel in Mingo Junction, Ohio also voted to join the USW. These workers are independents, Republicans, and Democrats, and they are ready to work together to make their workplaces safer, to have a voice on the job, and to make steel our country needs to drive the future. They know bargaining together with the USW will do better for them better than going alone. And that is my message to the committee today. All of this, despite our differences in approach, must come together and strike a bargain that will ensure a strong domestic steel industry and reward American workers. Other witnesses at this caucus hearing can run through the challenges that the domestic industry is facing. The OECD highlights that excess capacity is projected to rise to 720 metric tons by 2027. To give that perspective, the U.S. produced around 83 million of steel last year. Excess capacity pushes global market prices down and in turn makes it harder to invest and maintain U.S. production. The Section 232 tariffs on steel continue to be effective in pushing back the flow of excess capacity. But we need to push for longer-term commitments from our trading partners to limit excess capacity. Congress has a role to play here by updating our trade laws and ignoring all the tariff garbage. We need to focus on policies and maintain an industry critical to our nation. We also need to improve our trade agreements to have strong rule or origin policies in steel. As an example, the melt and pour standard in the U.S. MCA for automotive was an important step, but we need to expand that melt and pour requirement to all steel heavy products in the USMCA. Congress should push the administration to build a fortress America related to steel products with USMCA. We cannot let our market be the dumping ground of other countries' steel in an effort to keep their unemployment rate low. This requires strong domestic policies too, bills like the Ship for America Act, which will create Maritime Security Trust Fund and a strategic plan to rebuild domestic shipbuilding industry. This bill will end up creating new demand for American steel. We need to maintain and build Buy American policies. We need to grow into markets and replace steel made in People's Republic of China and U.S.-made steel. We want to work with the Caucus on balancing the scales to make it easier for steelworkers to fight for their jobs, to invest in our communities and create the next generation of high-paying manufacturing jobs. This requires a mix of actions by Congress, investing in our plants and making it easier for workers to get a first contract when they join a union, and improving our trade laws to defend against unfair trade practices. Our union is going to organize steelworkers across the country, fight for fair contracts for our members, and we will defend the American steel industry from anyone who seeks to close our plants or make our country less secure. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, sir. Now I introduce Mr. Barry Schneider, the President and COO of Steel Dynamics and the Board Chair of Steel Manufacturers Association. Mr. Schneider is responsible for Steel Dynamics and steel platform, steel fabrication platform, and metals recycling platform. Prior to that, Mr. Schneider served as Senior Vice President of Flat Roll Steel Group, responsible for the company's entire flat roll steel operations, including the company's 3 flat roll steel mills and numerous flat roll processing, coating, and distribution operations. Mr. Schneider has been with Steel Dynamics since 1995, serving in various operational leadership roles within the company's steel operations, including Engineered Bar Products Division and Butler Flat Roll Division. He was also part of the team that constructed the company's first steel mill in Butler, Indiana. Mr. Schneider has also served as past president of the Association for Iron and Steel Technology. Steel Dynamics is one of the largest steel producers in the United States and a leader in electric arc furnace production. Today, Mr. Schneider will be testifying on behalf of the Steel Manufacturers Association, which represents the electric arc furnace industry and is the largest steel trade association in the U.S. Mr. Schneider, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Mervyn, and distinguished members of the Congressional Steel Caucus. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to discuss the state of the steel industry. My name is Barry Schneider, and I am the President and COO of Steel Dynamics. In addition to my role at SDI, I have the privilege of serving as Board Chair of the Steel Manufacturers Association. The SMA represents the electric arc furnace steel industry, which accounts for more than 70% of American steel production. Due to strong government actions, such as strengthening the Section 232 tariffs, right-sizing regulations, and passing significant tax reforms, the American steel industry is well positioned. However, many of the issues that have caused job losses and economic harm in the past are still lingering. China continues to dump massive steel overcapacity globally, distorting steel markets. Interest rates remain too high, permitting inefficiencies persist, and workforce shortages continue to impact manufacturing. Since their introduction, the Section 232 steel tariffs have been a vital pillar of the American steel industry and a critical safeguard for U.S. national security. In response, the domestic industry created thousands of jobs and invested more than $25 billion to expand capacity, modernize facilities, and strengthen supply chains. Steel Dynamics alone has invested over $6 billion since 2018 to grow our market share and introduce new product capabilities that were not previously available from domestic producers. Despite calls from many trading partners to reduce these tariffs, the administration has remained steadfast, ensuring the U.S. can reliably meet its growing steel needs for infrastructure, data centers, new manufacturing facilities, housing, and beyond. Another action taken last year that is already delivering positive results is the Working Families Tax Cuts. This legislation included several provisions that strengthen American manufacturing, most notably the restoration of immediate expensing for research and development costs. By renewing and permanently restoring immediate expensing for R&D, the tax cuts ensure that American steelmakers can continue to invest in innovation and maintain our technological leadership at a moment when that edge is more important than ever. A strengthened USMCA could play a pivotal role in advancing the American steel industry. Achieving this will require targeted improvements, including requiring that all steel and steel-intensive products be melted and poured in North America to qualify for USMCA preferential treatment. We must also ensure that Canada and Mexico match the United States' efforts to confront the global market distortions that continue to undermine steel fair trade. While the 232 steel tariffs protect against dumping of unfairly made imports onto our shores, China produces far more steel than it can ever use, putting steelworkers everywhere at risk. We will need to work globally to ensure that other countries' measures match our own, which will improve global markets for steel. Also, recruiting and retaining workers continues to be a top issue. Our position as a global manufacturing powerhouse will always be dependent on the ability to find, train, and retain good people. There are two items in particular which Congress has before it that would invigorate the steel industry and domestic manufacturing. First, the Leveling the Playing Field Act 2.0 was designed to give our government appropriate tools to protect American workers and adequately address the evolving threat China poses to domestic production. Second, strong federal investments in our nation's infrastructure will strengthen demand for American steel. We urge support for robust Build America, Buy America requirements. It's a simple idea. If we're rebuilding America, we should do it with American steel and American workers. Thank you for holding this important hearing today. We greatly appreciate how the Steel Caucus is constantly looking for ways to deliver for American steel workers. Our industry is in a good place today, but we cannot become complacent. Moving swiftly on Leveling the Playing Field 2.0 will provide the government with the tools to fight unfairly traded products from flooding our shores. Continued federal investment in infrastructure using American steel will ensure tax dollars benefit American communities. We are excited working with the Steel Caucus on these ideas and many more that help steelmaking communities across the country flourish. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Murvan.
Finally, we welcome to the panel Mr. Steve Robbins, who serves as the Vice President at Court and the Chairman of the Committee on Pipe and Tube Imports, the CPTI, is a critical voice in today's conversation, as the association represents pipe and tube member companies with over 40,000 employees across the country. I will also note that AdCorp has a newly constructed state-of-the-art facility in my district of Holbrook, Indiana. I appreciate Mr. Robbins taking the time to share your perspective today, and I recognize you for 5 minutes, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman Movan, and distinguished members of the Congressional Steel Caucus. Thank you for inviting me to testify this morning. My name is Steve Robbins. I'm the Vice President of Strategic Sourcing of AdCorp, one of the nation's leading electrical security and infrastructure producers. We're a manufacturer of steel pipe and tube products, including metal conduit, mechanical piping, and solar torque tubes. We're headquartered south of Chicago in Harvey, Illinois, and have 23 manufacturing locations across the U.S., as well as operations overseas. AdCorp employs over 5,000 people, primarily in the United States, with 1,000 people employed in steel pipe manufacturing at our facilities in Harvey, Holbrook, and Phoenix. Additionally, we have other steel-consuming locations in Byesville, Ohio, Hebron, Ohio, and Wayne, Michigan. The company's most recent investment in Holbrook, Indiana, is a newly constructed facility that includes a state-of-the-art pipe mill that produces solar torque tubes used in renewable energy initiatives. This morning, I'm pleased to appear as chairman of the Committee on Pipe and Tube Imports, CPTI, the nation's leading trade association for the U.S. pipe and tube industry. CPTI members make an array of carbon and stainless pipe, tube, and fitting products. We have 29 CPTI members and 12 associate members. Today, our members are located in 32 states and 105 congressional districts with over 40,000 employees across the country. The industry is an essential customer of the nation's steel industry. In fact, many of the companies joining me on today's panel are steel suppliers to the pipe and tube industry. Historically, the industry has been challenged by unfairly traded imports of pipe and tube from across the globe. Having the ability to use the U.S. trade laws, the industry has filed over 200 anti-dumping and countervailing duty cases in the past 4 decades that provide relief to the industry and its workers. Today, there are a total of 801 anti-dumping and countervailing duties in place, of which 85 cover steel, pipe, and tube products. CPTI supports the Steel Section 232 and the administration's actions in 2025 to increase tariffs from 25 to 50% and broaden the scope for steel derivative products. CPTI supports fixed-rate tariffs as an alternative tool to enhance the effectiveness of trade policy and eliminate loopholes in the 232 process. CPTI strongly urges the Steel Caucus to continue its engagement with the administration to retain the Steel Section 232 program and to ensure there is adequate enforcement. In the past year, pipe and tube imports have not fallen off as expected and actually have increased by 300,000 tons, taking jobs from our industry. Imports of pipe and tube continue to take more than 1/3 of the U.S. market. December 4, 2025, the CPTI provided testimony at the public hearing on the first joint review of the USMCA. Testimony focused on the need to ensure that USMCA countries act in concert against the scourge of massive world steel overcapacity driven by China. In addition, the testimony focused on the need for timely monitoring of steel imports by the 3 countries along with coordination of the respective customs agencies. The association plans to continue to engage with the administration as the review process goes forward. At our recent leadership meeting, CPTI directors agreed that it will be important for the industry to work with Congress to advance legislation that will strengthen U.S. manufacturing, including a focus on legislation that strengthens trade and enforcement tools. As Congress moves forward on its 2026 calendar, we'd like to highlight some of those. Leveling the Playing Field Act 2.0, this legislation has been introduced to strengthen trade laws that are used by our industry and workers to challenge unfair trade practices. Advancing the Steel Act of 2025, advancement of legislation to remedy action by bad actors and trade cheats, and provisions included in the Fighting Trade Cheats Act and the Protecting American Industry and Labor from International Trade Crimes Act. We also support strengthening of Buy America programs for national infrastructure projects and other federally supported projects managed by U.S. agencies. Advancement of the Manifest Modernization Act legislation to expand the collection of manifest data for aviation, rail, and truck entries. And we support the full funding in the fiscal year 2027 for all the U.S. trade agencies. For decades, this Congressional Steel Caucus has led the way in development and enactment of legislation that has supported a stronger, stable, and innovative steel industry. As a very important customer to the industry, we share a common priority to strengthen and protect our markets, to be part of the nation's economic recovery. Our industry remains resilient, and with your ongoing leadership and support, it can continue to grow, provide manufacturing jobs here in the U.S., and contribute to a stronger economy. CPTI looks forward to working closely with you in the second session of the 119th Congress, and thank you for this time.
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate all the witnesses being here today. Now I'm going to go to member questions, and I recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Mike Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming to see us. One of the things that I think that gets lost in the shuffle, we have a lot of legislation that have things that get put into law. The problem is the enforcement. And when I see what's happening to our steel industry and the market shares that we've lost to unfair competition globally, what the hell are we doing? It's nice that we all get together once a year to talk about you. I'm just going to encourage you, the people that you have that work with us, be consistent and be here often. It's very difficult to sit in our positions and think that we can have casual conversations and think that, well, we got it done. So Congressman DeLuzio and I have introduced some legislation to protect the market. I'm just going to encourage you all to please stay on it, stay on it, stay on it. Don't back off of this. We cannot afford to lose market share to people who gain the whole system. It's unfair competition. Now, I love putting legislation in place, but you gotta enforce it. You've got to enforce it. So as you're all sitting here, I just would like you all to just, for a moment, talk about your total economic footprint. Talk about what you all do, not just in the taxes that all the steelmaking people pay, how it supports every single thing that we do. When we have people working, when we have people paying taxes, when we have unions that have fought for protection for workers, with health care and pensions, that is a huge issue. There's no way we can protect the future if we don't protect the present. So if you want, just take a chance, just take a moment, go down through what, if you can, you tell us your total economic footprint, not just the issues you have today, but your contribution to the health of America's workforce. So whoever wants to start first, fine, Mr. Consultant, you've got a plant in Butler, Pennsylvania. I love the fact that you're there. I love the fact that we're producing grain-oriented electric steel. I love the fact that the country is really in great need of a lot more grain-oriented electric steel. But if you could just kind of touch on your workforce, the contributions that take place because of having a successful business model, and we find a way to actually enforce people from other places in the world who talk about, yeah, oh yes, yeah, I'm glad you put that in. We'll continue to do what the hell we want because you're not going to do anything to enforce it. So if you could start, Mr. Consultant, talk a little bit about everything the company does for the people who go to work every day to produce this product.
Yeah, we are very proud of what we do in Butler, Pennsylvania. It's sacred ground for us, and for several different reasons. But the main reason you, Mr. Kelly, you remember well, 4 days before I acquired AK Steel in 2020, I was sitting in the Steel Caucus and I made a very clear position that I was acquiring a company that had already committed to shut down Butler,
I
Pennsylvania.
understand that, but can you talk about what the company does provide as far as pension benefits, the wage taxes that are paid, the way we enforce it, enforce laws and to make sure that these towns, Butler, Pennsylvania, by the way, is where I live. I live about a half mile from the mill. I've been in the mill many times. I wish other people who took credit for being in the mill actually showed up. But it really depends on elections as to which way we want to vote. Because if we think there's something that's going to enhance us, we're going to say, I really like this person. What I would really like to do is look at the game films, please. Look at the game films, and if we're going to put laws into place, it's the enforcement of the laws, and that's why I asked you. So with Cleveland Cliffs, because you have a lot of different holdings, your economic footprint.
We are the most relevant taxpayer and employer in that area, and you know that very well. That plant was slated to shut down. It's the only plant in the country that produces grain-oriented electrical steel that will transform. So we avoided that.
Okay, it's fine. I'm going to be out of time, but what I'd like to do, if you would all, Mr. Burke, good to see you this morning. I would like if you could get back to us of what it is that you provide that stabilizes the American economy and the American workforce. Our unions work hard every single day to produce a product that we're getting gained from other places in the world that overproduce and completely destroy the market. So my time's up. I appreciate you being here today. But if we can, you've got people who can get back to me. They haven't talked to me in over a year, but I'd like them to start talking to me about what it is. And if you can all just explain what you do to make America safe, what you do to make sure that when people retire, they're actually not going to have to depend on young taxpayers to support them, but you're going to have things in place, policies in place that make it easier for them to retire and much, much easier, as we know from our steel workers. They're very valuable. But I'm out of time, Mr. Consultant. I am open anytime that any of your people want to get with me and let me know. I've asked these questions before. I'm really looking for some answers. Thank you all for being here today.
Butler, Pennsylvania produces grain-oriented electrical steel.
We gotta move on. All right, we're on a 4-minute clock for the questions, Ms. Catherine.
Thank you, Chairman Crawford and Mervan. Thank you for convening this wonderful meeting in the state of Ohio, as some of you know. And this fall, last fall, I had a chance to go up to the Sulak. I've given a lot of attention to that in my career. was able to speak with the colonel of the Army Corps of Engineers who's in charge of that project. And I said, this is the first time in over half a century, for 7 years, that we've actually been able to build something to make a difference in the Great Lakes economy. And he said, ma'am, I am so proud. He said, I'm building America. I said, yes, you are. So I can say to my colleagues and to the leaders of the steel industry, I think it's very important for members of Congress who on average only serve about 6 to 8 years to be able to go to the STU, maybe under your umbrella somehow, and for the Great Lakes Nation to see itself as a whole. And I don't think that that occurs very often. I just wanted to put that suggestion on the table to see the connectivity of your industry and the importance of what we do here. But to get out, 56, 57 years before we actually have another lot built, that's not good enough. And so a lot of our infrastructure falls behind. I just wanted to put that on the table here. But my question really goes to the science of your industry. And that is, what more can we do in terms of the science of materials, of energy, of the cross-border mobility? What more modern systems or innovations could we have in metals? You may not be able to answer that question today, but I know for Cleveland Cliffs, I've been absolutely fascinated with the way that you've changed your production technologies. And I ask myself, what more can we do to help steel be more efficient in this country? I don't think we've solved the rust problem, have we? So the question I really have is, I would be most interested where I can make a difference as a member in terms of the science and engineering of your industry and what we can do in order to make new product, refined product, and move it in different ways. I don't even know at this point in my life, in terms of construction in the country, how much more steel we use in building construction. Maybe there's something more we can do there too. And I think the amount is increasing, but the science and engineering of your industry, I'm extremely interested in. So if anyone wants to comment on this,
Congresswoman Barry Schneider, SMA, in Steel Dynamics. We continue to make stronger, safer steels that are lighter. It impacts the auto industry. Higher strength steels impact the entire construction industry, whether it's rebar going into concrete or whether it's the structural beams. We continue to innovate new, safer designs for construction and designs that are easier to construct in the field to make advantage of building fast and building safely. So steel continues to be innovative, and we continue to develop a lot of products across all the SMA member companies and our industry as a whole.
I have to represent companies that process beryllium, copper, different types of metals. So just know that there are members of Congress who care about the science of your industry and the engineering of your industry. Thank you.
Gentleman yields, Mr. Davidson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Thanks for all the Steel Caucus members, and thanks for all of you who've come to give us testimony, are building great things here in America, and representing workers who are out there doing it day in and day out safely, with great productivity. So prior to coming to Congress, I owned many manufacturing companies, including metal stamping and plastic injection molding, die mold making. So purchased a fair bit of product, but in my niche, we didn't have leverage with you guys as suppliers or with our customers, so you really had to execute well. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I know one of the things that you can do to make steel better in the United States is make it easier to mine in the United States, and so I'm glad President Trump and his administration is doing that. And one of the things you need to mine to make steel is coal. So, we can keep the one on coal engine and we can mine that, and we can get coke to make steel. We can generate electricity, which is harder to do under previous regulatory frameworks. And we can get permitting, so we can get the investment done. All those things are underway under this administration. I'm excited about it, but I am concerned because we're not passing enough laws. We passed a fair number of these things through the House. I think we passed something about NEPA about every week. but it never seems to get across the finish line in the Senate. So I just, you guys are invested in a lot of states, and I'd love to see leverage on the Senate to get them to move this across the finish line, so we don't see ping pong like that. And we saw some of that, in other ways. With Cleveland Cliffs, a great Ohio company, bought another great Ohio company with AK Steel, which is in Middletown. In Hillbilly Elegy, Vice President Vance spoke eloquently about what was called Armco Steel back then, where he and his family and the community of Middletown benefited greatly from that presence there, and people in Middletown are still benefiting from that. And so, Mr. Goncalves, I would just like to highlight that plant, and there's been some developments there. What's that look like? And then also for Mr. Millsap, what's the labor negotiation like there? And how's that look for the future in Ohio? And we're open for business all over the state, but we're particularly open in the 8th district.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And I'm very happy to tell you that we are going to modernize Middletown. That's already a very important plant as of today, the largest producer of automotive steels in the country, to support the supply of the automotive industry. The same way I was explaining to Congressman Kelly that Butler works is the single company in this country that produces steel for transformers or grain-oriented electrical steel. We have the technology, Congresswoman Catherine. We are technologically extremely up to date in terms of what happens in the entire world. So we're not behind anything. What we need to do and what we need from Congress as these things are continuing to happen and the modernization of plants continue to happen, is to understand that we sell steel to markets, to end users that need to produce right here in the United States and not go across the border to Mexico or across the border to Canada or import steel that's not melted and poured in the United States to be just processed here. It's a system that's very complex. Congressman is mentioning mining. He's absolutely right. It all starts in Minnesota and in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, when we mine iron ore, in West Virginia, where we mine coal, and that's how it works. It's a complex system. We need your support in a comprehensive way through the entire supply chain, from mining to port, to melted and cast, and then used and manufactured in the United States.
So our relationship with Cleveland Cliffs and their plants in Ohio is good. And so we are expecting to have a good negotiations and be able to reach a labor agreement that is fair to both sides and protects our pensions and increases the pensions for our retirees and try to make sure we protect their health care.
Thank you both, really appreciate the presence.
Gentleman's time expired. Ms. Hootley.
Thank you very much for organizing this to the caucus, the leaders and chairs. My question is largely for Mr. Gonzalez. Thank you very much for being here today. It's a pleasure to see you here in Washington, and it's lovely always to see you in my district as well. As you might recall, sir, I am an engineer, so I think a lot about how things are systemic and how they work, not just in theory, but of course in practice as well. Mr. Kelly brought up to some degree my question. As I mentioned, in Cleveland Cliffs and Coatesville, where we employ 640 steel workers and make military-grade steel, Mr. Gonzalez, from your vantage point, where are the biggest breakdowns in our current trade enforcement system? Clearly, this is an issue. We believe that we have some pretty strong regulation and legislation, but could you elaborate for us on where the biggest breakdowns are in our current trade enforcement system that allow for unfairly traded steel to still undercut our domestic producers? And what changes would most improve the certainty for facilities like our Coatesville facility and the workers who depend on them? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. We have always appreciate your leadership and your support in the Coatesville area. We absolutely believe that if we don't protect Section 232 tariffs and don't allow for Section 232 tariffs to be used as a bargaining chip when negotiating trade agreements, that's a good start. The second thing is that not to allow for end users that lobby so hard here in this city to win concessions that at the end of the day plant the seed of the destruction by starting small and then growing. One exception will enable the next one. One exemption will create another 3 or 4 exemptions. And the system falls apart when these things start to happen. Well, that's what I expect members of both sides of the aisle to continue to do. Protect the basis of the system. We'll do the rest, but don't allow for small things that are often not really relevant to the big thing to be that little bacteria that will infect the entire system. Congress can play a very important role in that, and we expect that to happen.
Thank you. I guess my next question is also for Mr. Gonzalez. What federal policies, whether related to workforce training, capital investment, or energy reliability, would be helpful in facilities like Coatesville to continue to be able to modernize, be competitive, and to provide good paying jobs for the next generation of steel workers as well?
Yeah, with specific to Coatesville being a military police facility, everything that we're doing right now in terms of reinvigorating shipbuilding, particularly military shipbuilding, will be an enormous positive for that specific plan. And for the entire steel industry in the United States as well. Other companies here sitting in the panel produce plate, and will benefit from bringing shipbuilding back to America. We've ascertained that over the course of the last decades. We just give it away. We just let it go. And now we need to rescue. And Coatesville will play a Lord's Harbor in Indiana as well, Congress. And we will play a big role in making that, enable that type of initiative.
Thank you. I think I probably am out of time, and in respect for the rest of the people who have questions, I appreciate you guys coming here today. I do.
Gentleman yield, Mr. Staubach.
Thank you very much, Chairman Crawford, Vice Chairman, Merman, for your hearing today. As most of you know, Mr. I represent Minnesota's 8th Congressional District. It's a home to the Iron Range. We've been mining iron ore for 145 years, safely. We won 2 world wars. The iron ore that we mine makes 80+% of the United States steel. It's an important part of the United States. Mr. Gonzalez, it's great to see you again. You know very well how important President Trump's Section 232 tariffs are, not just for our domestic steel industry, but specifically my constituents in northern Minnesota. Frankly, I don't think there's a single congressional district in the entire country where the Section 232 tariffs have had a larger impact. The Section 232 tariffs save the Iron Range and save their domestic steel industry. As you alluded in your written testimony, while President Biden kept the first Trump administration Section 232 tariffs in place for steel, in reality, these tariffs looked quite different. Luckily, virtually on day 1 after returning to office, President Trump took decisive action to fully reinstate and strengthen these tariffs. Can you expand about how the Section 232 tariffs today look different than they did under the prior administration?
Yeah. Now, Congressman Staubach, very nice to see you here. It's a great pleasure to see and to have this interaction with you here in Steel. Minnesota is key for the sustainability of the steel business in this country and to bring manufacturing back to America. The system now is serious. Exemptions are eliminated. Exclusions are not allowed. But the countries that like to dump here in the United States, they're resourceful, and they will continue to keep trying. And we need the Congress of the United States, the House, particularly the Steel Caucus,
No,
resist.
I appreciate that. I just want to be crystal clear with the Biden administration. There was 31 countries that had exemptions for 232. That's 27 in the European Union, Brazil, South Korea, Argentina, and Australia. Today, under the Trump exemptions, or Trump tariffs rather, there's 1 country, the UK. You also note in your testimony that while these tariffs are in place, other manufacturers who utilize steel have not fully embraced domestic steel and continue to try to demand foreign supply chains and continue to seek exemptions from these tariffs. Can you please expand upon this? What can Congress do to address this in your view?
The level that we view 2.0 is a good start. We would like to have, we would appreciate the bipartisan support to pass this legislation and to get this thing implemented and enforced. That's how it works. It's not protectionism, it's self-defense, it's national security.
Well said, thank you. Mr. Byrd, great to see you again as well. In addition to growing this economy, increasing our demand for domestic produced steel, steel that of course uses taconite from northern Minnesota. The Trump administration is supporting our domestic industry by cutting red tape and revisiting burdensome regulations put forth by the Biden administration. Notably, under President Trump and Administrator Lee Zeldin's leadership, the EPA is revisiting the national emission standards for hazardous air pollutants put forth under the Biden administration that impact several different aspects of domestic steelmaking. The Biden EPA air standards were simply unworkable and likely would have pushed more of our steelmaking overseas. Can you shed some more light on the impact of these revised air standards along with other ways that you see this administration's reduction of red tape benefiting and growing our domestic steel industry?
Well, first,
A quick answer, if you would, Mr. Byrd.
thank you very much for your advocacy for the steel industry, and you've been absolutely awesome. I'd say this about this, that the prior EPA rules were in many ways not technologically achievable. You just couldn't do it, and in some ways not even justified by science. So this fresh look at what's possible and what's impossible really means a lot. So we have an opportunity to actually take a closer look and see what we can do. Along the same lines, as we're doing massive investments, we appreciate any help that we can get relative to the permitting process to expedite those things. We do our best, our very best to be great citizens and making sure that we fully comply with the environmental laws and regulations. So the Trump administration and with your advocacy has been really remarkable. We're really delighted with this last change that was made so that we have time to do compliance and protect the jobs and the workers that are there.
Thank you very much for your.
Show me yield, Ms. Wesensky.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. Thank you to Chairman Crawford and Vice Chairman Moran for holding this hearing, and thank you again to the witnesses for providing testimony. For over 125 years, the steel workers of Granite City have been the backbone of American infrastructure. But for too long, these families have lived under a cloud of uncertainty, bouncing between idle blast furnaces and temporary restarts. Recently, through tireless advocacy by the United Steelworkers in Granite City, they secured a key victory. Relighting the blast furnace at Granite City Works, bringing back hundreds of jobs at this facility. However, we cannot settle for short-term fixes. U.S. Steel has yet to commit to operations beyond mid-2027. Today, we have an important and unique opportunity to work together, policymakers, labor, and business alike, to find a workable, sustainable path forward to ensure the economic security of the Granite City facility for years to come. Our goal is not just to keep the lights on until 2027, it is to ensure that Granite City is a part of the next generation of American manufacturing. So I have a few questions. My first, good morning, Director Millsap. Would like to ask you, how has the on-again and off-again status of blast furnaces at Granite City affected the ability of your members to plan for their families' futures and the local economy of Granite City?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Obviously, it's very stressful for them trying to figure out how to survive for the long term. So most of the time, the members are saving as much money as possible because they know at some point that blast furnace is probably going to be idle again, which I think in the last 10 years has been idle 2 or 3 times. The other problem that it creates is like now, it takes about 400 employees to run the blast furnace. We only have about 18 employees left on layoff because people severed, took their pensions and went and found employment other places. So we lose a lot of the skilled employees that you need. And we partnered an agreement with U.S. Steel that gave some relief under the contract on training and using contractors. in order to get the blast furnace up and running. But you also have employees that went to like Alton Steel in Granite City. They're now leaving Alton Steel, going back to US Steel. And then Alton Steel has a problem with getting employees.
Thank you very much. My next question, Mr. Barrett, regarding the Granite City Works, the current commitments, which end in 2027. Beyond that date, what's the roadmap for lasting durable capital investment in the Metro East? And what do you need from us in Congress and here at the Steel Caucus to make that a reality?
Well, thank you very much for that question. If you recall that we announced in December that we would restart the blast furnace. This is being driven entirely by demand in the business now. We're going to keep the blast furnace up at least until the end of 2026. We continue to look at what the dynamics are with demand, and if conditions continue to improve, there will be more investments in that facility, but it's too soon for me to say how much that will be. We expect the blast furnace to be up and running by spring, adding 400 people or so. And I have to tell you, I'd like nothing more than to keep that open forever. I actually was born in St. Louis, and so this whole area, I desperately need this to continue, and we'll do everything we can to make that a reality. But with all things, there are no guarantees. It's a difficult business, and we'll invest the capital when we can and make sure that we create the great jobs that we're able to do by reopening the blast furnace. Full well knowing it's disruptive, it's unsettling, and very difficult for the workers.
Thank you. I could put in one more question.
No, Jim, your time's expired. We're going to move on. We got a lot of people in the queue, so I hate to cut you off, but we got to move on. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you everybody for being here. Hearing about blast furnaces reminds me of the issue that we had in my district a few years ago where we couldn't get the Biden administration to put tariffs in place when China was dumping cheap tinplate steel and amongst other countries into the marketplace. So we closed down one of the last blast furnaces that does tinplate steel in the United States because we couldn't get tariff relief. And the United Steelworkers and the Cleveland Cliffs went and pleaded their case to the Biden administration, and we didn't get it. We didn't get it. So that's the result of that. When we're not sticking up for our industries here in the United States. First question to Mr. Goncalves. Let me ask you, so look, Trump's tariffs have protected the steel industry, I believe, from cheap Chinese imports. How important is it that that tariffs are certainly preserving the U.S. dominance in the steel industry, particularly as it relates to China, but how should America prioritize American steel with other trade tools? Obviously, you have tariffs. Are there other trade tools that we could be using to prioritize U.S. steel?
Thank you for the question, Congressman Moore. Look, the most important thing that I believe that can advance a conversation today with Mr. Caucus is exposing the importance of the end user to make this thing happen. Because steel doesn't come to the United States swimming. Someone imported here, usually someone in the United States. Take the example of Wilton. We actually got the assignment of tariffs on tinplate, and the ITC made a crazy decision to say that now there will be no impact if we don't implement the tariffs. And then we got a 0-4 defeat on the ITC, and the rest is history. All that lobbying was done by consumers of tinplate that celebrated in the press that they had won against the two constituents that were defending the case, Cleveland Cliffs and the U.S. Steel. Now, with the Section 232 tariffs in place for real under the Trump administration, they are begging for tinplate that no longer exists. So they created the issue for themselves and for the state of West Virginia. So the answer to your question is look into who are the ones that really import steel into the United States. The countries outside will always try, but if we have the needles here, that will happen. If we don't have the needles here, we're fine.
Thank you. This is kind of for everybody, but how do we prepare a workforce to meet the needs of the 21st century steel industry? How are we preparing a workforce? And I mean, we could, United Steelworkers or anybody else would like to answer that question. I'd be curious how you're kind of training up folks as it relates to meeting this, what I hope is a resurgent industry here in the United States.
So I can tell you that we worked with the different Purdue University in Northwest Indiana. I'm trying to do some training for major skills, electricians and millwrights. And we've also gone around to the different high schools and have talked to the students about getting further training in order to come into the steel industry.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Mr. Davis. Thanks, Mr. Chair and Vice Chair, and to all the people representing the industry today. Thank you so much. My question is, and I want to go back to shipbuilding capacity. Obviously, we're so far behind, and I think it's important that we're very intentional in our path forward, but you can't do it without strengthening the industrial base. New Corps still another plenty of opportunities. We're glad to have you in the district with Pentecostal places and so forth. The question is, and this director in particular, thank you for being here. When we look at where we need to go, what steps beyond the legislative authorities that's been identified by Congress take? And then my question is, how close do you believe moving consistent with the legislative priorities that it would help strengthen the industrial base, especially when you talk about upstream suppliers like domestic steel.
Sure. Well, Congressman, first, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for all you do for Nucor. Thank you for what you do with honor for Country Caucus. I know we both have a mutual friend, and Rob Barcott and that team that does just incredible things for our veterans and military folks, so thank you for that. So a few things here, right? Of course, you bring up Hertford County, North Carolina, which is one of the most advanced plate mills in the United States. It goes in Humvees, warships, carriers, the list goes on, a lot of defense applications, as well as construction industry. We have the capacity, right? Capacity is not the issue, right? It's demand. Demand is the issue, and specifically to shipbuilding, right? We can make the plate. It's needed. We make it every day. There are others on this panel today. The incentives are what's needed. So beyond just level playing for that 2.0, a few various things that you already heard a good bit about today on the panel is incentivizing shipyards, right? Incentivizing ports, incentivizing the actual construction of the vessels, right? That's what we need. Again, that's what will create the demand for us. We have plenty of capacity. We have plenty of ability to make exactly what those shipbuilders need. We just need the actual builders.
Thanks so much. Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer my time to you. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Burritt. I had one more question regarding Suncoat. They presented a plan to U.S. Steel that would usher in more robust operations in Granite City Works to allow the facility to take on granulated pig iron production. Can I just ask, is U.S. Steel considering a more permanent structural alignment with the Suncoat facility to streamline that pig iron transition and secure the long-term footprint of Granite City Works?
I'll have to take a closer look at that, and I did not look at that recently, but I'll take a closer look. Gentleman yields, Ms. Miller.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you for being here today for this important event. I'm also glad that the administration and our colleagues in Congress are recognizing the importance of our domestic steel industry. Steel is vital for bolstering our national security by reducing dependence on the other nations and creating thousands of good-paying jobs. I can't emphasize enough the importance that has played in revitalizing my district. I married my West Virginian in 1973. That was the year that the number of members of Congress was reduced from 5 to 4 because of the previous census. I moved into a charming small town. I came from Columbus, Ohio. Huntington had 85,000 people in it. Today there are 47. That's such an example of what bad policy can do to our people, our states, and our jobs. And so many people had to leave our state so they could feed their families. They went elsewhere. And then even today, when the Biden administration closed the pipeline on the West Coast, 300 West Virginians had to come home because they lost their jobs. So I'm very, very sensitive to this. The Cleveland Cliffs mine in my district produces 2.3 million tons of coke and pulverized coal injections and employs approximately 400 important workers. Nucor, thank you. Nucor is constructing a $4 billion facility in my district, and it will produce 3 million tons of sheet steel annually and create over 800 jobs. The town of Point Pleasant, that whole area of Mason County, it's amazing the feeling that we have watching things coming and growing along the Ohio River. I can't tell you how personally I take this. As a member of the Trade Subcommittee on Ways and Means, I understand the importance of implementing policies that both protect our domestic steel production and increase exports from other nations. Mr. Gonzalez, many of President Trump's priorities related to reshoring American manufacturing, stopping unfair trade, and addressing steel overcapacity by taking real policy actions are top steel industry issues that you have talked about for years. How is Cleveland Cliffs positioned to take advantage of these policies and to help the administration deliver on a manufacturing renaissance?
Thank you very much for the question, Congresswoman, and I fully understand your point of view, and we are on the same page on that. Keep in mind what happened in West Virginia, and Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and Illinois, and Indiana was made in USA. We allowed those imports to come in. Society was complacent in saving pennies and losing dollars. And we continue to do that. If we don't pay attention, it will happen again. The Trump administration is putting a stop on this, but it's the job, in my opinion, the job of Congress to not allow the deterioration of the process by allowing small things to become big things. West Virginia was at the heart of our ability to produce energy in this country. We gave it away. When we acquired the Steel in 2020, the only plant that produced regulated electrical steel was shut down. So we are ready. We have the technology. We have the plant, we have the people, we have the technology. We need support in order to make sure that end users will not jeopardize what we have.
Gentleman's time has expired, Mr. Soto.
Thank you so much. First of all, Mr. Pickett, thank you and Nucor for the investment in Central Florida Frost Group back in my old district, an old citrus town that really needed investment, and we're very grateful for that. There's bipartisan support for targeted steel tariffs to ensure sufficient domestic capacity. Yet we've seen 9 months of declining manufacturing under President Trump, something no one has mentioned so far, so I'm shocked about that. Across the board tariffs beyond steel are one of the major drivers of a manufacturing decline in the United States right now. 9 months. What do you think is the right balance on tariffs to stop this disastrous manufacturing?
That directed to me? Yes. Okay. First, I'd say that, I'll at least speak to the steel 232 tariffs, right? Because those are what critical for our industry. We've actually seen our utilization rates to go, right? Because we're getting rid of a lot of these imports that frankly were dumped or subsidized by the Chinese or the proxies. So for us, that is an absolute good thing, right, that we're seeing. We're also seeing some of these derivative products, right? We're seeing these people rehire people, right, so that they can actually make these products again from steel in America versus having them shipped and dumped already made here and not actually having the ability to make those manufactured products here. So I do think it takes some time once you actually reset 232 to let that run through the system. I think that's good for what you want.
Gentleman yields, Ms. Van Dyne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. China and its proxies continue to exploit the weaknesses in our trade laws by flooding global markets with subsidized steel, distorting supply chains, and undercutting American manufacturers who invest, innovate, and follow the law. Enforcement matters, and policies like Section 232 tariffs and strong anti-dumping and countervailing duty laws have helped restore stability to the steel market and allow domestic producers to invest billions of dollars here at home, creating good-paying jobs and strengthening our national security. As today's witnesses have already made clear, bad actors adapt quickly, and our trade laws must keep pace. And that's why Representative Sewell and I have reintroduced the Level Playing Field 2.0 Act. This bipartisan legislation modernizes our trade remedy laws. It cracks down on repeat offenders, and it gives the Department of Commerce the tools it needs to respond faster and more effectively to unfair trade. Today's discussion is about ensuring that American steelmakers are competing on a truly level playing field, and that our trade laws are strong enough to defend American workers, communities, and our industrial base. Mr. Pickett, you've described global overcapacity, especially from China and its proxies, as an existential threat to the American steel industry. How do repeat offenders and circumvention schemes undermine current enforcement efforts, and how would stronger tools help to address those problems?
Sure. Congressman, thank you so much for what you do for this steel industry. You're absolutely correct. Overcapacity is an existential threat. A lot of it stems from China, all its proxies, and then the proxies of China's proxies, right? That's the games that they play. What I tell you is that these repeat offenders, right, they continue to undermine. These bad actors are always going to try to find a way to circumvent. So what we do as part of the American steel industry, we benefit greatly from these trade laws. We need level playing field Act 2.0, and I'll give you an example. We may go through several years of harm of a particular product, right, to be able to show, it's required by statute to show that harm, and then it takes a long time, millions of dollars to the attorneys, right, so we can actually get the case put together, and then bring the case, and then it takes 14, 16, 18, sometimes 20 months, continued harm, continued problems, continued millions, to actually get that case won. All the while we may even win the case, China or its proxy switches the game again, switches to another country, opens up under another name, starts with that country, and continues to come in unabated. What Level Playing Field Act 2.0 we will start to shut that down. We will have much more robust timeframes that we can bring cases. It will be less expensive for the industry to actually bring those cases. And we really appreciate all the help you all can give us to ensure that gets passed. That's the massive effect that we have to have happen for us as we bring these cases.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gonzalez, Cleveland Cliffs has invested heavily to build a fully integrated domestic steel supply chain. How does delayed or weakened trade enforcement affect your ability to make long-term investments in American facilities, American workers, and how do stronger, more critical tools like those in the leveling the playing field 2.0 support those decisions?
This legislation is extremely important, fundamental for us to continue to invest and to continue to have the ability to deploy capital and to grow and improve our technology capabilities. So our technological capabilities are at par with everywhere in the world, at the very least, in some places better than what they have outside. I would like to go back to what Ben just mentioned in terms of this rotation of export. What never rotates is the import. So we need to look into with the legislation to penalize the import reasonableness and continue to bring imported steel into the United States, whether it's from China, Vietnam, Indonesia, or Mexico, whatever. This is the part that we're missing. That's what we need.
Thank you very much.
Gentleman yields, Mr. Alford.
Thank you, Chairman Crawford, and thank you all for being here today. I want to thank you for your continued work in supplying high-quality steel for military bases in particular. As many of you know, the Missouri 4th Congressional District, some of Fort Leonard Wood and Whiteman Air Force Base, strong domestic steel supply chain is crucial to the military installations, as well as for the farmers in my district. We have 87,000 farms in the great state of Missouri, second only to Texas in number. Mr. Pickett, I want to start with you because you have a very vital installation in Sedalia in our district, and I've visited Nucor there. I'm so impressed with the workers, their attitude, their passion, and giving back to the community. The Nucor Pavilion there at the Sedalia State Fair. We had the Ag Committee there for a Farm Bill listening session, and it's great that you guys are so involved in our community. I also greatly appreciate your role in supplying high-quality American steel. As a member of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on National Security and Related Programs, I'm focused on ensuring our industrial base is resilient and secure. I understand that rebar imports from Mexico surged after Mexico was exempted from Section 232 measures, with imports reportedly more than 1,100% higher in 24 than during the 2015 to 27 pre-tariff period. Are you still seeing challenges, sir, related to Mexican rebar imports, and what impacts are those having on domestic producers?
Yeah, first off, Congressman, beautiful place out there with that mill, so I always enjoy getting out there and just out my hands, and thank you for joining us out there. So, what I would say is that we've had quite a number of persistent bad actors, right? And that also exists from Mexico as well, and you're correct. I'd actually say that figure, since Mexico was let out prior to President Trump reinstituting those on Mexico, rebar had surged almost 1,200%, right? I mean, this is ungodly amounts that they were able to do, and frankly, generally in long products, piping tube, wire rod, rebar, and now even structural steel, right? They have built mills, and the sole focus is not to serve the Mexican market, it is to serve the U.S. market, or attempt to serve the U.S. market, and put customers of ours and steel companies out of business. And that continues somewhat, although I will tell you that with President Trump's reinstituting of the 232 tariffs and keeping Canada and Mexico subject to those has greatly cut down on what's coming across our southern border in that regard and northern border.
China continues to overproduce steel and aluminum and route through third countries, undermining U.S. producers. Despite U.S. International Trade Commission's continued affirmation of anti-dumping and countervailing duty orders, significant concerns remain about enforcement and circumvention. How can the Department of Commerce more effectively prohibit these trade violations?
Yeah, well, first off, the Commerce, I'd say the Commerce Department needs additional resources as well. An incredible team that you've got at the Commerce Department Enforcement and Compliance Division, but they're strained, to be blunt. All the investigations we have going on, all the AD/CVD issues we have going on, they need that extra attention. We need the Trump administration to move new nominees to the ITC. We have 3 vacancies. We have 3 active commissioners, 3 vacancies. That needs to happen. And then finally, and you've heard a little bit about it, that we're playing for Act 2.0. That's a way that we can actually strengthen these AD/CVD laws so that we can go after any of these trade cheats. Primary example in that bill, for 2 seconds, is that we're finally going to institute, if that would get passed, things on cross-border subsidies. That didn't exist in 2015 when the original law was passed, really not that much. Now, we need those provisions because China's setting up shop in all these different countries, and that's not getting counted through our AD/CVD laws.
You've got 45 seconds left.
I'm sorry, you know.
Oh, here, 4 minutes.
Yeah, 4 minutes, sorry. Yeah, sorry about that, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Gonzalez, appreciate you being here and your testimony. Appreciate your leadership of the list. The Middletown Works plant in Ohio is currently juxtaposed just below my congressional district, and I have many people who live in my congressional district who work there. And And in the redistricting in Ohio, it will now be located in my congressional district, in the upcoming new congressional district. I look forward to that redistricting prospect. That plant is incredibly important in serving both the automotive industry and, of course, the defense industry. I know from the importance of that plant and its importance in Ohio that Cleveland Cliffs is uniquely positioned among the U.S. steel industry and producers. I wondered if you could tell us, one, through your leadership and experience, how is Cleveland Cliffs uniquely positioned as U.S. steel industry producers? Why don't you give us some perspective in your leadership of the company, how the company is positioned? But two, what are some of the policies that we should be looking at to ensure the success of that plant and its success in servicing the overall importance that we have as we look to the defense industry and the manufacturing industry of the automotive industry?
Thank you very much, Congressman. Middletown is the most capable, the most technologically advanced plant in the United States to produce explosive parts for the steel for explosive parts for the automotive industry. So one thing that would clearly facilitate and improve the stability of Middletown into the future is understanding that automotive plants that are built in Mexico and auto parts plants that are built in Canada are not employing in America. That's so easy to understand, but it's missing all the time. And the impact on prices are zero. If you build in the United States, you produce cars in the United States and use American, Belgian, and Polish steel to produce the cars that are produced in the United States. That's the basics. We don't need technology. We don't need anyone from outside the United States to come here to teach us. We supply all the international car manufacturers producing steel in the United States with American workers out of Middletown. Also, Middletown, Ohio is the most advanced and technologically capable research and development center, particularly specialized in automotive steels and grain-oriented electrical steels for transport. So they're in Middletown, employing Americans. So we will invest, we'll continue to invest, we'll continue to deploy a lot of capital, and there's a huge plan for Middletown involving the revamp of the blast furnace and the implementation of a cogeneration facility that will produce electricity out of the site. And this will happen, but as long as Congress enables laws that will kind of force the steel consuming industries to buy melted and poured steel in America and produce their product in the United States, not in Mexico, not in Canada, not abroad.
Mr. Chairman, that was a great answer, thank you. Dylan Yields, Ms. Rowe.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to thank Mr. Turner, too. The Cleveland Cliffs impact on the Buckeye State is beyond anything you can imagine, and it actually affects my constituents, too. So with that being said, Mr. Gonzalez, the Cleveland Cliffs has a very good relationship with the United States Steelworkers. What are the benefits of maintaining a cooperative and collaborative partnership with labor?
We rely on our workforce. We are proud of our relationship with the U.S. government, particularly in the state of Indiana, where we have almost 10,000 employees. We are the largest in the state of Indiana. And with other unions, the UAW, we are the largest UAW representative company outside of automotive, and with the IAM, which represents the workers in Middletown. So we cooperate with the workers. We're partners. We work together, and we're very proud of that. The importance is that when we work together, 1 + 1 is 5, not 2. As simple as that. And Michael is here. You'd like to hear from him as well, if I can ask you.
Please.
Yeah, our relationship with Cleveland Cliffs is good, right? And they take care of the workers. They provide the safest possible. We work on safety issues constantly and try to make sure that the workplace is safe for our members.
That makes me so happy. Being part of the populist movement, when you look at towns like Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Cleveland, Youngstown, Akron, Canton, all these different, Detroit, this was the grid of America. This was the middle class of America. And this has been rotted away. It's partnerships like this could actually save the middle class. Without that, the republic will die. Having said that, more domestic production means more jobs for American workers. How are President Trump's action on steel tariffs helping to reduce the penetration of the global steel overcapacity in the U.S. markets?
I think that the most relevant thing that the Trump administration has already implemented and continues to work on is to keep the Section 232 tariffs going down to derivative products. Because just protecting steel doesn't do much if the consumers are not also under the same rules of engagement. So you can't allow for end users to be importers. We still have one of the best sellers of General Motors, the Chevy Track. We produce in South Korea. That's ridiculous. That's absurd. That's obscene. We can do it here in the United States. And I'm giving you a very clear example of how Congress can act in a way that protects the business instead of just being on the repetitive good words, but not really very effective. Let's see the big picture. Let's see the entire supply chain going downstream. Let's see why we allow that to happen. And let's stop. And then we're going to have Indiana back, we're going to have Ohio back, we're going to have Illinois back, and keep going. The Midwest will be back, and the middle class in the United States will be back to where it belongs.
My grandparents were all born in Italy, and what better way to celebrate our 250th birthday with that? That's patriotic. When we reinvest in the middle class, Joe Bag has done his work. Thank you. With that, I yield my time.
Gentleman yields. Mr. Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Very quickly, two things I'd like to expand upon. The realigning of the blast furnace of number 14, Gary Works, that commitment, and what that means to you and the future of the steelmaking industry within my district. And then secondly, there is a clause within the Nippon U.S. Steel deal, the force majeure. And within that force majeure usually is war, pandemic, strike, but also tied to that is lockouts, which you control. One of the concerns that the unions have is that lockout, while you go into negotiations, can be utilized as leverage against the union negotiations going forward, that lockout clause, majeure, can pause or be a reason to stop that investment. Can you expand upon that, or just kind of talk about that concern and also the investment that you have of the $300 million and what that would do for the economy and the future of steelworks?
Okay, well, thank you for that, and I was not aware of that clause or what you're talking about. What I will say this is, we'll adhere to the National Security Agreement. It's legally binding, and we intend to spend all of $10.8 billion through 2028 as required by the National Security Agreement. So we have already moved forward with the project at the blast furnace, which, as you well know, that would have been shut down, that would have been closed without the additional investment coming our way, without the direct foreign investment. That facility, that blast furnace would no longer exist. So because of this investment, this means a lot to the workers, this means a lot to the community, and this means a lot to U.S. Steel, and I would say American Steel as well.
So, it's because of time, making you aware of that clause of the lockout within the commitment, what are your thoughts, knowing that the lockout, which you control, exists for those? Are you making a commitment that that will not be something that will be used for leverage when negotiations start on that capital improvement plan?
We're fully committed to following the National Security Agreement as written, and we can commit to that.
Okay, thank you very much for trusting that. And again, thank you for the advancement within the community of what you're doing in an infrastructure and what that means to the steel workers, what that means to Gary, Indiana, and the commitment. Thank you for your leadership. And to be honest and forthcoming, I was very apprehensive about the deal with the commitments that you came out with in December of 2025 for that investment. It's my job to make sure, not only do we make sure that there's trade policies that protect the steel industry, but hold those commitments and accountable for my community. So I look forward to working with you in the future for those types of things.
Thank you so much for that. We're all about moving forward.
Yes, sir.
Future's bright.
And I want to be an advocate and partner with you.
Thank you.
As we move
Thank you very
forward.
much.
And then, from headquarters, Mr. Robbins, I want to talk to you about, from the, your testimony very quickly from CPTI supported, fixed rate tariffs and the 232 processes. If you can just go into, give me more, 30 seconds, of how important it is to protect your industry, and how tariffs, tariff protection, enforcement, all of those things from, Duncan Steel.
The industry is, steel pipe and tube industry consumes 10 to 15% of the steel industry's output. It's critical that we have a fair place to play. And protecting and monitoring trade is important, and making sure that we identify the trade cheats and hold them accountable so that we can compete on a more level playing field. We think that there's still opportunities to modify your customs entry, and we think the option is the fixed rate tariff in order to protect the industry. It's more specifically in Accor. We're a very large conduit producer. During the surge in the last administration, we lost 10 points in market share. We are working diligently to claw that back. And if we can just get more trade enforcement, more conduit we can sell, as we electrify this country, the more we buy from stores.
In closing, I again want to thank all of you, and the importance not only of the steel workers in manufacturing, and want to make a commitment that the caucus is co-chair and for my district to make sure that we protect the livelihoods and our national security through the steel industry, and I thank all of you very much.
Gentlemen, yields, we're close to wrapping up, but I'm going to squeeze Mr. Joyce in and recognize you for 4 minutes.
Very kind, Mr. Chairman. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here. Appreciate all of you gentlemen being here, and ladies. And myself, my father was a former coal and coke salesman, bless his soul, and taught us early on about the importance of the steel industry. And we used to get up there at no matter what I was doing in those summer nights at 5:30 in the morning, keep that hand in your chest. Don't you have somewhere to be? Yeah, where you were in, you're down there changing tires on the trucks first thing in the morning to make sure that we could get the coke delivered to the plants. So, and I get it inside the plant. So I really, truly appreciate the hard work that you all do. And I'm glad to see that we're working hard to bring American steel back. Mr. Gonzalez? We're seeing rapid growth in AI, data centers, electrification, and advanced manufacturing, all of which are driving a significant increase in electricity demand here in the U.S. Cleveland Clinics. It's the only American producer of grain-oriented electric steel, which is essential for power and distribution transformers. Given that growing demand, does Cleveland Clinics have the capacity to meet the projected surge in energy demand?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. We do have the ability to produce and sell more grain-oriented electrical steels, because we need to beef up our capabilities in terms of moving electricity from point A to point B, and that we need transformers for that we need grain-oriented electrical. That said, that's another case of an industry that is always prone, always ready to import the cheapest material available around in the entire world, no matter from China or from Japan, from Korea or from Europe. If it's available, if it's cheaper, they will try to buy it. And that's where the problem starts. If we allow for these cheap players to come to the market, nobody will deploy capital for the long term. And that's why when I acquired the AK Steel back in March of 2020, that plant that was the last man standing, the last one in the country, is slated to be shut down. So instead of having one like we have today, we be 0. And that was by design. So our industry depends on long-term capital commitments. And we can only deploy capital long-term if we have conviction that bad players dumping steel into our country are not going to be allowed to do that. Let me give you an easier example to understand. You protect the steel with Section 232 steel tariff. But if you don't protect the appliances industries with the same type of Section 232 protection, we're going to have the ability to produce the steel, but our appliances will not be able to compete against imported refrigerators, imported stoves, imported dishwasher, and then the problem is the same. So the entire supply chain has to be protected. So let the play field 2.0 addresses that, and Congress needs to focus on that. That would be a fix, a resolution in terms of the future, and not specific for the time being, but for the next generation, the generation after next.
I wholeheartedly agree, and let's make American Steel great again.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yields. I recognize myself for a couple of quick questions before we wrap up because we're running out of time. But Mr. Burke, you're about ready to invest $3 billion in my district in a GOES mill. And I can't tell you how excited I am for more reasons than one, not to mention just the fact that there's so many jobs associated with that, but from a national security perspective, can you unpack that a little bit? Because we've touched on it a little here today, but I don't think we can overstate the national security imperative that it is for us to be engaged in GOES production.
Yeah, we're I think, delighted with this Nippon deal because it clearly does strengthen national security. And with grain-oriented electrical steel, since it's not made well here in the United States, this is an opportunity for us to actually provide the steel that this country needs. And then also with the DRI facility, that's another efficient way, cost-effective way to also put a bunch of investment in Arkansas as well. And we really appreciate the climate you've created for investment there. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Mr. Piggott, I want to ask you, you know this, we've worked together for a long time. I am a Buy America guy. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are on what we need to do to strengthen that, to encourage and sustain that Buy America mantra from a policy perspective. What would you suggest?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say the Buy American provisions, they already have some bedrock, right, of what increases demand for American steel. So we have significant opportunities, we believe, at Nucor to strengthen that. I'll give you a couple of examples: energy infrastructure and shipbuilding. So with the energy infrastructure piece, a lot of different energy projects have been announced in the last year or so. Unfortunately, some of these projects are also already getting supplied by foreign, cheap, dirty steel. That has to stop. I think there'll be a lot of significant federal investment coming in on a lot of these energy infrastructure pieces, and that can be done with American-made steel. The other piece is the shipbuilding. We've talked a little bit about it today. Very attracting very significant federal investment as well. Should apply Buy America to that. Right? Again, shipyards, vessels, ports, you name it. Right? That's what it's going to take to bring that back. But the incentives need to be for those items, right? Not steelmaking capacity. And then we need to apply Buy American to it so that it's built with American-made steel.
Thank you. I appreciate you all being here today. I'm going to, Mr. Moran, do you have any final comments?
Again, I just want to thank you for the hundreds of thousands of people that you impact their economy. And in the back, I have a friend who did the American dream, right? He came from a steel town, he was an engineer from a local community college. Now he owns a transformer company that works in the mills in Northwest Indiana, provides for 60 families. Multiply that by 100,000 families that you all represent, and your drive, which the theme of today was making American steel survive and thrive over the next generations and for our national security. I appreciate your commitment to those families and to our nation, and look forward to advocating for the steel industry and the steel workers with you every single day. Thank you.
And again, I want to thank all of y'all for participating in today's forum. Thank you especially to the witnesses who took time out of their very busy schedules to be with us today. I hope everyone here today will use the Congressional Steel Caucus as a resource as we move forward together to advocate for the steel industry. American-made steel has been the backbone of this country for over 100 years, and I look forward to the work ahead to ensure it continues to thrive. And I look forward to seeing all of you at the next Day of the Steel. With that, we are adjourned.